Why the Sabertooth cat hunted in packs, and why that's worse than you think. Smilodon, pronounced Smylodon, didn't hunt like a lion. It hunted like a wolf pack with the body of a bear. And the more we learn about how it operated, the worse the picture gets for anything that lived alongside it. For over 100 years, the saber-toothed cat was drawn wrong. Not in the anatomy. We had the bones. We had the teeth, the 7-inch curved daggers that give the animal its name. What we got wrong was the personality. Museums built dioramas of a solitary killer, a shadow at the edge of a herd, a lone hunter dropping onto a mammoth's back with those blades bared. It was a compelling image. It was also probably wrong. And when a different picture started coming out of the tar in Los Angeles, the animal that emerged was somehow more disturbing than the myth. Let's set the stage. This is North America, roughly 25,000 years ago. The last ice age is grinding across the continent. What is now suburban Los Angeles is a scrubby grassland dotted with pools of natural asphalt, thick, black, and sticky enough to hold a bison in place for the rest of its short life. Mammoths walk through what's now the parking lot of a shopping center, ground sloths the size of a Ford F-150 lumber through the underbrush. Giant, short-faced bears, taller than a modern grizzly and faster, patrol the ridges, and moving through it all, in numbers we didn't understand until recently, is Smilodon fatalis, pronounced Smylodon fatalis, the saber-toothed cat. Weight, about 600 to 900 pounds. That's heavier than any lion alive today. Some of the biggest males may have pushed 1,000, shoulders like a linebacker's, front limbs thick enough to pin a struggling bison to the ground, and a bite that opened wider than any cat that ever lived, wider than 120 degrees, wide enough to sink those 7-inch teeth into a throat without the jaw getting in the way. And here's the first thing that starts changing the picture. Those teeth weren't built for a solo ambush. Saber-tooth canines are curved, thin from side to side, and shockingly fragile. Compared to a modern lion's teeth, which are round in cross-section and built to survive being ripped through struggling muscle, Smilodon's blades snap. Paleontologists have run the stress tests. A tooth that long moving through a thrashing animal breaks. Not sometimes, often. Fossils from the Brea Tar Pits in Los Angeles show broken canines by the hundreds. Which means whatever this cat was doing, it wasn't doing it alone. Because if you're alone, you don't get to choose your moment. You take what you can get. You pin the prey however you can. You bite whatever's in reach. And you accept that sometimes those long, thin, precious teeth are going to snap on bone. With help, if there are 3 or 4 of you holding the animal down, keeping it still, controlling the angle, you can pick your spot. You can slide those blades into the softest part of the throat, sever the windpipe, and step back before the prey has a chance to twist. The teeth survive. The kill is clean. The math starts working. That's the first hint, and it's just the first. I want to stay with the tar pits for a minute, because a lot of what we suspect about Smilodon's social behavior comes out of that ground. The Brea Tar Pits are the richest Ice Age fossil site in the world. Over 100,000 large mammal bones have come out of that asphalt. When paleontologists sorted through them, they noticed something strange about the saber-tooth remains. There were too many. Way too many. At most predator trap sites, the ratio is skewed. For every 10 herbivores that die, you get maybe 1 predator, drawn in by the meal and getting stuck itself. That's how nature usually works. Predators are outnumbered. That's their whole business model. But at Brea, saber-tooth remains outnumber every other mammal in the pit combined. More saber-tooths than mammoths, more saber-tooths than bison, more saber-tooths than any other cat species by an order of magnitude. The leading interpretation for that ratio is that Smilodon showed up in groups. When a bison got stuck, one saber-tooth heard the distress calls and came to feed, then a second, then a third. Some of them got stuck too. Then more came, drawn by the calls of the ones already stuck. It was a compounding trap, and every time it happened, the pit swallowed another handful of cats. Not every paleontologist buys this reading. Some argue that distress calls will pull in any large carnivore in earshot, social or not, and that the tar pit numbers might be inflated by playback effects rather than pride structure. It's a fair objection. But even with that pushback, the ratios at La Brea are hard to explain with a purely solitary animal. Modern tigers and modern leopards hear a distress call and may come to investigate, cautiously, alone. What we see in the tar is closer to mass response, closer to what we see in African wild dogs, in wolves, in hyenas. Which brings us to the second piece of evidence, and this one is harder to argue with. The bones themselves. If you look at Smilodon skeletons from La Brea, a huge percentage show something you almost never see in solitary predators: healed injuries. Not fresh ones, not the wounds that killed the animal, but old wounds that grew back over. Fractured hips that fused wrong, snapped ribs that knitted crookedly. Torn shoulders, damaged spines, broken teeth, all of it healed, all of it survived, and crucially, all of it in animals that lived for months or years after the injury. A solitary big cat with a shattered hip does not survive. It can't hunt. It can't run down prey. It starves in a matter of weeks. But at La Brea, we've pulled up sabertooths with injuries so severe they should have been fatal, animals that lived for years afterward. Something was feeding them. Something was letting them rest. Something was keeping them alive when biology said they should have died. The most economical explanation is a social structure that included provisioning. The pride, or the pack, or whatever we want to call it, fed its wounded. That's not just cooperation, that's care. Once you accept that Smilodon lived in groups that took care of injured members, the whole picture shifts. Because now you're not looking at a lone ambush predator. You're looking at a coordinated, social, long-memory hunting unit. A team. And a team of 600-pound cats with 7-inch throat slicers changes what it was like to be almost anything alive in Ice Age America. We need to talk about how that team hunted, because this is where the story stops being an evolutionary curiosity and starts being a horror movie. To do that, meet Chris Shaw. Shaw spent decades working at the George C. Page Museum in Los Angeles, right on top of the pits, and he was one of the researchers who pushed hardest for a rethink. He and his colleagues stopped treating sabertooths like scaled-up lions and started treating them as their own thing. When you look closely, this animal doesn't work like any modern predator. A lion sprints. Modern big cats are built for the chase, or at least the burst. Smilodon was not. The muscle attachments on its bones show an animal built for one thing and one thing only: wrestling. The forelimbs are massively overbuilt. The shoulder blades anchor into a chest that could hold down something the size of a horse. But the hind legs are relatively short. The animal was not fast. Modern estimates put its top speed at somewhere between 20 and 30 miles per hour in short bursts and only for a few seconds. A healthy adult bison could outrun it. So how did a slow, short-legged, fragile-toothed cat kill animals bigger than itself? Ambush. But not the way you're picturing. Solo ambush relies on surprise, weight, and a killing bite that ends the fight in seconds. That's how leopards work. Drop from a tree, hit the shoulders, bite the neck. Done. Smilodon couldn't do that. The teeth wouldn't survive the impact. So the group ambush model works like this instead. Multiple cats close the prey off. One or two rush in to knock it down, using their massive forelimbs to hook, twist, and drop the animal, the way a bulldogging cowboy takes down a steer. Once the prey is on the ground, held there by 2 or 3 cats sitting on it, another animal moves in for the throat. The bite is slow, deliberate, precise. The teeth slide into position. The windpipe opens. The prey bleeds out over the next few minutes while the cats hold it in place. From the prey's perspective, there is no mercy of a quick death from a spine bite. If you're a bison, or a young mammoth, or a giant sloth, you get held down. You feel the weight of 2 or 3 animals on your ribs. You feel the teeth slide in without breaking. You feel yourself drown in your own blood while the cats wait. That's the hunt. That's how it worked. And this method, it turns out, was extraordinarily successful. Isotope analysis on saber-tooth bones tells us what they were eating because the chemistry of the food ends up in the bone tissue. The results are what you'd expect from a top-of-the-food chain group hunter. Bison, horses, camels. Yes, North America had camels back then. Juvenile mammoths, big animals. The kind of prey that a solitary cat could not reliably take down. Smilodon was eating what wolves eat, but at scales that would make a wolf pack look modest. Back to the tar pits for one more piece of the puzzle, because there's a detail in the fossil record that most people don't know, and it changes how you should think about this animal. La Brea preserves not just adult sabertooths, but juveniles, cubs, and the age distribution of those cubs is telling. The young sabertooths were not fully grown until around 3 years old. Compared to a lion cub, which is more or less independent by 2, Smilodon had a longer childhood. Longer childhoods only make sense in animals that need to learn complex behaviors from adults. Solitary hunters can figure it out on instinct. Social hunters need to be taught. They need to learn who the group is, how it moves, how the coordinated kill actually works. A 3-year saber-tooth childhood is the fingerprint of a species that was teaching its young. We are not talking about a big cat that happened to run into other big cats. We are talking about a species with complex social bonds, sustained care for its wounded, coordinated hunting tactics, and a long enough juvenile period to transmit those tactics from one generation to the next. That is not the cat you saw in the museum diorama. That is something much closer to a mammalian velociraptor pack, if you'll forgive the movie comparison, except this one is real. This one weighs about the size of a Kodiak bear, and this one has swords in its face. Which raises a question we should probably ask. Why is this worse? Why does group hunting change the picture more than any other single fact about Smilodon? 2 reasons. First, group hunters kill more often. A solitary predator eats when it can. It waits between kills. It fails a lot. It goes hungry. Group hunters have a much higher kill success rate. Modern wolf packs succeed on somewhere around 15 to 20% of their hunts. Solitary tigers hunt closer to 5 to 10%. That means a saber-tooth pride was probably killing at 2 to 4 times the rate of an equivalent solo cat. Multiply that across the population of Smilodon in Ice Age North America, and you get a lot of dead herbivores, a lot of pressure on the ecosystem. Second, group hunters take bigger prey. A lone Smilodon might have brought down a young horse. A group of 4 could take a full-grown bison, or a subadult mammoth, or a giant ground sloth. This is what the isotope work shows. Sabertooths were punching well above their individual weight. They were doing it consistently, and they were doing it for hundreds of thousands of years. Now for the human piece, because Mark, you might be wondering what this has to do with you. Here's the piece. Modern humans crossed into North America somewhere between 15,000 and 20,000 years ago, give or take. The dating is still argued about, but when we got here, Smilodon was still walking the continent. For thousands of years, human hunters and saber-tooth packs shared the same landscape, the same prey, the same waterholes. There is nothing in the fossil record to suggest we hunted them for food. If anything, the evidence suggests the reverse. The reasons the saber-tooth eventually went extinct are debated. Climate change at the end of the last ice age reshaped the grasslands. The big prey animals began collapsing. Human hunters may have accelerated the collapse, but for a long window, thousands of years, Human bands walking across what is now the American Southwest were sharing hunting grounds with organized packs of 600-pound cats that specialized in wrestling large mammals to the ground and slitting their throats. Picture a night camp in that world. A small group of people, maybe a dozen, gathered around a fire. Somewhere out beyond the light, coordinated groups of saber-toothed cats were moving through the dark. They knew each other, they had strategies, they had cubs to feed, and they were bigger than any predator alive on land today. We don't know how often the two species crossed paths in a fatal way. There are no fossil beds full of chewed human bones, but the odds that it never happened at all are essentially zero. Somewhere in the Ice Age Americas, at some fire pit that is now a Walmart parking lot, a saber-tooth pack came for people. If that pack had learned that humans were prey, they were more than equipped to make the lesson stick. That's the part that stays with me. Not the teeth, not the size, not the muscle, the intelligence, the coordination, the teachers passing knowledge to the students, the pride that would come feed a wounded packmate. This wasn't a monster. It was worse than a monster. It was a family, and the family hunted. We're still learning about Smilodon. The tar pits are still producing bones. Every few years, a new isotope study or a new biomechanical model shifts our picture of what these animals were. The current best guess is that they lived in groups of somewhere between 5 and 20, with overlapping territories, coordinated hunts, and a social memory that spanned generations. In another 20 years, we may know their pride structures the way we know a lion's today, but the outline is already clear. The lone hunter in the museum diorama is done. The image we should replace it with is a working group of ambush specialists that carried its wounded, taught its young, and killed at rates that would have kept its territory quiet for miles. Here's the final piece of it. The reason group hunting is worse than solo hunting for anything alive alongside a predator, whether you're a horse, a bison, or a human being with a stone spear, is that solo hunters get lucky. Groups get consistent. A lone big cat is a chance encounter. A pack of Smilodon operating on a floodplain in what is now Arizona was a system that culled the herds, controlled the ridges, and moved with something that looked a lot like intent. The dinosaurs get all the marketing. They were bigger, they had a much longer run, but the cat that hunted in packs, the one that survived the Ice Age and shared the continent with our great-great-great-grandparents, the one whose broken bones we still pull out of the black asphalt under Los Angeles freeways, that cat did something the dinosaurs never quite managed. It combined size, weapons, intelligence, and social structure into a single killing unit. It was a design that we humans would eventually copy. Small groups, long childhoods, care for the wounded, coordinated hunts on prey much bigger than any individual could handle alone. That was our formula. It was Smilodon's first. The saber-tooth went extinct somewhere around 10,000 years ago, give or take. Its bones are still coming up out of the ground beneath Los Angeles at a rate of roughly 1 a week during active excavation. Every one of them is a message. Every one of them is a reminder that the ground we walk on now, the highways, the strip malls, the neighborhoods, was, once, patrolled by a family of 600-pound cats that had figured out how to work as a team. We inherited the continent from them. Every time a wolf pack in Yellowstone brings down an elk or a lion pride in the Serengeti drops a buffalo, or a group of humans in a boardroom coordinates on a plan, we're using a strategy that a saber-tooth would have recognized. The pack, the family, the team. It's older than us. It's older than any of us. In its original form, on this continent, it wore a coat of yellow-brown fur, weighed as much as a small piano, and carried a pair of 7-inch teeth in a mouth that opened wider than any cat that would ever live again. The dioramas will catch up eventually. The truth is already out there, buried in the tar, waiting. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.